book lovers. It is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about some dark fantasy recommendations. If you didn't know, this is a 7 on Sunday topic. I am the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the Goodreads page down in the description where you can check it out and you can participate in a topic in the future, or you can suggest a topic. This week's topic is technically inspired by the fact that it's spooky season, but at the very same time, not every single one of us read spooky books. I don't necessarily read horror as a genre. However, I do tend to read dark books when they all of a sudden make their way into my TBR and I read them, and then I realize just how dark they are. Also, my reading tastes are starting to mature a bit more. Even though I am going to be talking about a lot of young adult fiction, my taste is slowly evolving into something darker. By the time this video goes up, this is my first video as a 26-year-old. What? I would beg you to wish me happy birthday, but I don't know if I'm like even the significant age to even deserve a happy birthday anymore. Okay, I pretty much mentioned this woman's books in every single one of my videos these days, but I'm going to mention her books now because it suits the category very well, and I reckon they make a good spooky season read. Just pretty much anything by Laini Taylor. I swear Laini Taylor does very well with grimdark, and she also does very well with battle and war themes, especially in Daughter of Smoke and Bone, but that's something that also took me by surprise within the Strange the Dreamer universe. I thought to myself that this was just gonna be a light-hearted magical realism story. No, I ended up getting something a lot deeper. I think these books make a good spooky Halloween time read. However, you don't necessarily have to read them during October. They're not necessarily predominantly known for that. However, would recommend these books if you do like dark fantasy. First time I read Daughter of Smoke and Bone, was not a big fan of like dark epic fantasy, and I didn't enjoy the scope of the series. However, this series in particular does get very dark. Proceed with caution if you are wanting to read the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. It is a very good trilogy, very well structured, but there are some distressing themes of warfare in here. However, I very much do enjoy these books and I would highly recommend them, especially because we're talking about this specific subject matter today. Then I want to mention These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. The sequel actually comes out next month. I actually haven't pre-ordered that yet. Oh my god. Looks like the McElderry one I need to pre-order. Wait, McElderry, does that mean I have the manuscript on my computer? If the title doesn't scream dark, I don't know what does. This book in particular is a very dark read, especially if you do not like bugs. And also, it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling that's set in 1920s Shanghai. Pretty much there's a lot of gang and a lot of mob talk. I'm pretty sure anytime you have a book series or a movie series or a TV series that centers around certain gangs, there's gonna be a degree of darkness to it. But the twist of this book is that it also has some fantasy elements as well. So it does fit under this category. I reckon that this book and this series, I mean, I haven't actually read the finale yet, but we do know how Romeo and Juliet ends. And if the ending is somewhat accurate, then it's just gonna get darker from here. I want to mention one that not really many people talk about for its darkness. I mean, a lot of people talk about this series for it technically being like a guilty pleasure read. And yeah, it is a guilty pleasure read, but it's still dark. People are eliminated in very brutal ways in this series. I'm going to be bringing up From Blood and Ash here. It is not a series that I would recommend if you are wanting something a bit lighthearted. No, I'd recommend this if you're wanting something that is somewhat dark. I do get the critiques about From Blood and Ash. It's not necessarily one of those very well-written high fantasies. However, it's written in a way where you just want to have a good time with it. This series is literally not just a guilty pleasure read for me because the angst in the series is real. I do like the themes that it does explore in terms of Poppy and what she went through. Considering that I grew up in a similar kind of religious background, I can resonate. So there's darkness in that too. There's darkness in Poppy's psychology, and that is something that she has to deal with throughout the series. But also there are very brutal scenes in this book series. I do get why people read it for a good time. I do get the critiques. I do understand why, especially a lot of booktubers that I do watch say that this book series is actually one of the worst book series ever written. I've heard that being said a lot. I'm not gonna fight that critique because I just know where they're coming from, because it's not amazingly written. However, I love the themes that it explores, and I love getting to see at least myself represented in a character like Poppy. I pretty much just read it for a good time as well. Besides that fact, even though it's actually really hard for me to read because the psychology behind what Poppy's going through, it hits me hard. Sometimes I have to speak to a medical professional and say, hey, I resonated with this character a bit too hard. And sometimes it's about Poppy. I definitely have to say that there's a lot of darkness within the series, and it's not even just necessarily about the elimination that happens in the series. It's also the psychology. I didn't realize I put 2 Jennifer L. Armentrout series on here, but I did. I ended up putting the Harbinger series on this list as well, and I think that this one is even darker for those who actually grew up in religion, because if you guys don't know, this is the spin-off to the Dark Element series. The Dark Element series, some people want to recommend it because they prefer Roth as the love interest because he's the bad boy demon guy. I don't like that book series as much because it's so centered around the love triangle that it barely focuses on the plot. Whereas in this book series, the plot is so focused on, because it's not an established relationship, but we already know who gets with who. So we can focus more on the plot. To anybody who's grown up in religion, you would know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that this book series is really dark and kind of turns the themes of Christianity into a very dark situation, where the archangels are essentially trying to rise up and become gods and essentially trying to eliminate humankind. Yeah, no, I was getting chills because like I have really bad religious triggers, especially because I grew up being afraid of the afterlife due to my childhood. That is not information I owe everybody, but that gives you context as to why I see these things as dark, and that is why I don't reach out for horror, especially if it deals with religious themes like that. That's also the reason why I had a massive panic attack at the first episode of Castlevania. I do want to watch the show, but I was traumatized. You can ask Camilo, I didn't sleep for nights. But I guess to the extent of the Harbinger series, this is probably as much as I possibly can handle, taking the pureness of religion and corrupting it. Because this book series in particular, the spin-off series actually deals with the angel side of things. The original series deals with the demonic side of things, and the protagonist here, she's the daughter of an angel. So you get to see the more angelic realm, but you get to see it in a more corrupt way. I don't know, that's what really kind of just got my heart beating so much when I was reading this book, because it was really dark, at least for me to handle, due to the upbringing that I went through and my intense fear of the afterlife. I'm mentioning it if you have that trigger like I kind of do. And then I gotta mention Kingdom of the Wicked, and funnily enough, even though this book series kind of just takes place in hell, it doesn't really bother me. It's dark in a sense that, oh yeah, if you want that eeriness to do with the 7 deadly sins, and if you kind of just want to see them represented in like characters, Kingdom of the Wicked is the perfect series. I didn't realize how much of a good conversation I could have about this book until I was talking to Camilo about it after I read Kingdom of the Curse. Yeah, no, it surprised me a lot, and it got me thinking about the different deadly sins. It had me questioning a lot, you know? I like this book series mostly because of the symbolism. A lot of people like the book series because of the angst. I do like the angst. I don't like it in the first book that much. I feel like the first book was not that great. Like, it was dark, and I definitely felt the eeriness of the first book, but the second book, that's the best book. And honestly, I don't want it to wrap up in one more book. No, 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 no. I want this book series to continue. I see its potential. I want to kind of follow the rest of the sins and kind of just like see how they would interact amongst themselves without Emilia in the picture, you know? I think I like this series a lot, and I'm really invested, especially because of its dark premise. That's so weird considering my upbringing. It's just so funny how I wasn't able to handle the Harbinger series as much as I was able to handle Kingdom of the Wicked, but maybe it was because I went into the series prepared. Second last book series I gotta mention is Bloodlike Magic by Lizelle Sambury. This was a lot darker than I was expecting. I'm pretty sure there are trigger warnings at the very beginning of the book. If you get squeamish at a few things, I would suggest probably reading a few Goodreads reviews to just make up your mind in regard to reading this book, because it does come off as lighthearted sometimes. There are some great family moments. However, this book is actually a lot darker than I expected. I felt my heart racing very fast, not just because the story was very good, but because I actually felt genuinely afraid. It has some minor horror elements to it. I mostly wanted to read this book because it was kind of marketed as some sort of fantasy romance, but it feels like the opposite. It kind of feels like a futuristic urban fantasy fantasy that's centered more around family. I would argue that it's like light horror. This is definitely one that I would recommend if you are wanting something that is kind of dark. Probably not dark by horror reader standards, but it's dark by my standards 100%. The last thing I bring up pretty much defines dark. It's probably the darkest thing I have on my shelf. Berserk. Oh, okay. Now, this is the hard part. I have not talked about this manga on my channel since the tragic passing of the author, and I was not planning to cry at all, but it only just hit me as I picked this chunky volume up, that yeah, it hurts. It hurts because this manga series, we don't know if it will ever end. We have all of his source material out in the world, and it's actually really sad to know that he's gone, but I trust that he's in a better place, and oh my goodness. What I love about Berserk so much is actually very similar reasons to what I said about From Blood and Ash. Not it being like a guilty pleasure read, but the fact that I can resonate with this protagonist on an emotional level through what they've been going through. I'm pretty sure almost every single one of the readers of Berserk know exactly what I'm talking about. This book series does not hold back in its darkness. I would highly recommend you look at some content warnings before checking it out. I'm pretty sure that this manga is R17 or R18 plus, not recommended to younger readers. Look, it really depends on your maturity level, but this is definitely something that I would recommend if you are wanting something dark, but also if you're wanting something that you can easily somewhat resonate to and get some good insight and messages from. I understand why it can be offensive to a few people, especially if it does not make sense, but I promise it gets kind of less bleak as it goes along, and it takes guts on this journey of self-discovery and healing, and I appreciated that. And whew, I just wish that I could see Guts and Casca's journey end the way that Kentaro wanted it to. Oh my god. This is not how I wanted to finish the video, but it breaks my heart. Regardless of whether it ever gets finished or not, it's a series that I would highly recommend. There are 40 volumes out. It is definitely worth reading, 100%. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. Apologies for the emotional outburst. Yeah, it's just really difficult, you know, when you lose an author too soon. Rest in peace, Kentaro. Rest in peace. If you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. Seriously, it's the least you could do for my birthday. And also, I have social medias. I'm at gswizzlebooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And I'm also over at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.